It's Breaking Brian back with the final review for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This is the end, well, for season one at least. So yeah, what do I say, guys? This was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it quite a lot. And yeah, let's get started. So we get the HBO logo, the holiness thing. And then we start actually up with some jazz. They actually play some smooth jazz, which is very weird for Game of Thrones. And we see Lionel Baratheon and his maester here. You know, yeah, I don't know, it's just that part's just kind of funny. And then we see that is Duncan, who's still hurt from the fight. You know, it's been, I don't know, a day or two later, not sure. It's very unclear. He's still bloody and beaten, whatever. But they're still playing the sad jazz. Because remember, Baelor is dead. And then, the Maester is trying to do this weird herb thing, like fumes thing for Duncan, as Lionel is just like drinking and stuff. He's burning essence or whatever. And then, Lionel's just like, man, that tourney was more than I expected. You're trouble, Duncan. He's like, so, anyways, after we leave, like, let's go back to, Storm's End. Come back with me. We can hunt, hawk, and, other stuff. Just be cool. And it's funny, the Maester said that, like, Duncan's injuries are too severe. He's gonna die. And then Lionel calls him out and it's just like, you can't do anything. You're worthless. Like, everything is too much for you. And he tells him to get out, like, get lost. He tells, like, Duncan, he's like, don't worry about him. He's a terrible Maester. It's like, it's just funny. Like, Lionel is really funny on this. But Duncan's not really having it because he's just so despondent. After what happened with Baelor in the Trial of Seven. It's kind of funny how he says, come back to Storm's End with me, and I'll love you like a brother. And then he also mentions, like, hey, but if you don't come back, I will hate you like a brother, which is kind of funny. It's kind of like a callback to Robert Baratheon, his future descendant, because Robert Baratheon will only love one brother his whole life, Ned, and will hate his other two, like biological brothers. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And he goes to relieve himself. And, Duncan is just, just not really having it because, he's still just very despondent, like, while Lionel is carefree. And, he tells Duncan that you did that what you had to do kind of thing. But, and he kind of, as much as I love Lionel, he does kind of downplay. He doesn't talk about Baelor the best. Saying that, like, he was a dragon, so a dead dragon is a good dragon kind of thing. And Duncan kind of calls him out on it, but then Lionel calls him out on, being like, well, you only cared about Baelor, but we all fought for you. We all, like, could have lost everything besides our lives, unlike Baelor. And, we made it. Like, he's like, me, the other guys, the Apple Boy, Raymond. So he kind of calls out Duncan for that, and mentions how Baelor kind of risked nothing except his own life. Like, that's the only thing. He just died. Like, that was it. He offers Duncan again the chance. Like, you and I could be something at Storm's End, and he says that I am going to leave soon. And then we see Baelor's funeral. The Septa is doing it. And all of that stuff. We have the Targaryens here, the King's Guard, the Royal Guard, all that stuff. And they're just like burning Baelor's, body to, because this is during the funeral. And we get to see that, it doesn't look like Maekar's other sons are here. I mean, Aerion is to her, obviously, but then we're later to see Darion, and he's not that hurt, so I don't know why he's not here. That's kind of selfish. But then Duncan is watching from down below the funeral. He sees the smoke and fire, so he goes up there, and then I guess like Valar, Baelor's son, his firstborn, didn't show up, and Valar has a little Targaryen white in his hair, and he kind of tells Duncan how, like, my father fought for you, he died, and you lived. And he just mentions how also, like, so many sons die in their father's armor. Like, fathers die, they pass down their armor to their sons, and then they die, and so on and so it goes. But he mentions the weirdness of how my dad died in his armor. In my armor, kind of thing. That doesn't really happen, And Duncan agrees. And then Valar even says, like, His father was very young and would have been a great Targaryen king, one of the best. And Duncan doesn't deny that, and Fala just doesn't want to see Duncan at all. He doesn't curse him or anything, but he says, be gone. My father died, but you lived, and that doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I feel for Fala here. I mean, he's going through a lot right now, so, yeah. Anyways, Duncan leaves. He goes back to the turning grounds as the small folk are all packing up and stuff. Some people look at him kind of mean, some, not so much. And he comes across Raymond, who calls him out from far away. And then, so yeah, they're talking, Raymond and Duncan. And yeah, it turns out that Raymond was kicked out of his family tent by his cousin. And, Duncan mentions how everyone hates me kind of thing from what happened with Baelor. But Raymond hugs Duncan and says, I don't hate you. Which I have to admit, this was a really good brother relationship between the two. Not what I expect from this show, and I definitely do like it very much. Raymond is kind of like this Padre character, and it's a very wholesome relationship. Like, I definitely think that is what was missing in a lot of Game of Thrones stuff. Just loving brothers and stuff, even if they're not related. Yeah, and they hug for a while. It kind of reminds me of me and my friend Adam. When I went to Texas, we would hug for like 10 seconds, like not like we would hold on to the hug for 10 seconds, and it's like, okay, are we done? Like, kind of like that. It was really funny, but no, it's really nice and sweet, so I like that. So yeah, Raymond kind of mentions what happened, with his cousin, and then Duncan sees his new shield, the green apples, which means that it's unripe, but it's not rotten, like the red apples, and new shield. And then all of a sudden we have Red, who comes out of Raymond's tent, and Duncan kind of just looks at him like, dude, like, wait, what? Like, you're seeing her? Like, because Duncan has seen her many times with Sir Manfred Dondarrion, I mean, they have been a thing this whole season, and then all of a sudden now she's with Raymond, and then they start kissing, and I'm just like, oh boy, Raymond, you poor thing, you have no idea what she's capable of or what she is. And then he, is just like, Duncan, this is my wife, and Duncan is just like, wait, what? Like, huh? When did this happen? Like, how long was I out? Like, was there a time skip? And he kind of mentions how, like, hey, after the fight, so she volunteered to treat me, and then one thing led to another and stuff, and, it just happened. And then, poor Raymond says, she has, we got married because she told me she's with child, and, Duncan's face here, like, oh boy. It's hilarious because when I watched this, I knew immediately, like, Raymond, you are not the father. Duncan knows this in his head. And it's hilarious because even though Duncan is kind of a thick-headed person, not the smartest, even he is just like, oh boy, buddy, I don't know how to tell you this. I mean, in his head, obviously. He doesn't actually tell him, but it's just like, ooh, how do I tell him that his new wife is carrying a bastard from some other guy? Like, and also it's like, there's no way you can get pregnant from 1 day or 2 days. Like, that's not how it works. And it's just like, instead Duncan just kind of like, it keeps quiet about it, and she even says it feels like a boy, which once again, there is no way you can get pregnant and know what gender the child is that soon. And Raymond is just so ecstatic and happy, to start his own house eventually and have a wife and a child. And Duncan is just once again like, oh gosh, I can't, this will destroy him. So Duncan chooses to, it's like a telltale game with the choice of like, hey, should I lie or tell the truth? And he's just like, oh boy, I'm gonna lie here and just say, congratulations, you two. Yeah, I don't want this to get ugly. Yeah, so awkward. So then all of a sudden the Royal Targaryen cards come, and they tell Sir Duncan to come with them because Maekar wants to see him, and Raymond tries to defend Duncan, but he says it's all right. So then we see Prince Maekar in his room in his office, which, I mean, it's not actually his office, it's in House Ashford, but yeah. And he kind of mentions to Duncan how, he's very despondent because he says that everyone will say I killed my brother on purpose, everyone will hate me, everyone will remember me for this, they will curse me, all that stuff, they will have rumors about me, I never meant to do that. And Duncan says, I never meant for this to happen, but if I didn't, I would have lost a hand and a foot. And Duncan kind of mentions how, like, maybe in the future, my hands and feet, maybe as I fight, that, like, what I do might be more than a prince. And, like, kind of to make up for the loss of Baylor. And, Makar's just kind of like, yeah, not likely. Like, it was not a very good trade-off. Your abilities for Baylor's life, yeah, not even close, kind of thing. And he tells Duncan that Aegon wants to still be his squire, and he tells Duncan that he has much to learn as far as being a knight. So he offers Duncan to come back with them to Summer Hall, train Aegon, and we have Aegon listening in the conversation, and but unfortunately, Duncan refuses. Saying that he's done with princes. He's not doing this anymore. And then Duncan comes down and talks to Egg, and like they barely talk, and it's just simply, hey, I can't squire. You can't squire for me anymore. It's over, and it's just how it is. And then Egg says, "You're not the knight I thought you were." Like he's kind of upset and walks off, and leaves Duncan there. And then afterwards, we get this weird dream sequence, hallucination, daydream, flashback. I'm not sure what it is. But Duncan is just kind of talking on the hill to Sir Arlen, and just about like being a knight and the stories. And then all of a sudden, let's see. Sir Arlen mentions how like why it's called Penny Tree, and he mentions how like at Penny Tree the Lord would send the knights, the boys off to war. They would stamp a penny on the tree, and then they would leave it on the oak, and then when they come back from war they would take their penny back, but that the tree was covered in pennies because so many die, and that's why it's called the Penny Tree. And Duncan has this moment where he's just like, why did you never knight me? So now we get full-on confirmation Duncan was never ever knighted by Sir Arlen. He has been a fraud this whole time as far as being a knight, but he did defend Tansel and stuff. So, even though he's a fraud, he still is in a way a true knight. So it is complicated. And all of a sudden, Sir Arlen doesn't really say anything, and then he dies. And then we have the zoom out shot in the hill, and Duncan is crying for Sir Arlen, mourning him. And then all of a sudden, it turns out that Sir Arlen was just sleeping. He was pulling a Mermaid Man moment where he's just like was pretending to be dead by sleeping with his eyes open. And he's just like, oh, so that's why they call it the Penny Tree and this and that. Like, oh yeah, like he totally zoomed out with his eyes. Like Duncan like even called out to him like 3-4 times. He's like, sir, like unbelievable. And but he does tell Duncan that a true knight always finishes a story. Which definitely confirms that George R. R. Martin is not a true knight. So anyways, in real world, Raymond and Duncan are having a drink in a tent, and I guess it's Lionel's, and then Raymond kind of asks about Beesbury's coffin and all that. It's covered in bees and all that stuff. I guess that's how the Beesbury family, mourn their lost loved ones. They let their body become a husk for bees. Like, ew. Yeah, we even see the King's Guard here, so yeah. And he's just like, man, how did they do that with the bees? Magic or something? And once again, you have Raymond and oh yeah, I forgot to mention, instead of Red, her name is Rowan, which is kind of funny because the governor also had in the comics, in The Walking Dead, the governor had not in the comics, in the show, he had a girlfriend named Rowan that the show completely forgot about, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, anyway, Duncan is just like, oh my goodness, can you two get a room already? Like, good lord. And we see some cute kids, some girls in here playing under the tables and stuff, throwing, I think, food at each other. I don't know. But this is really sweet. I did like this because, yeah, these girls are just really cute. It's nice to see noble children, it's always noble heirs and stuff. And it's like, well, it's nice to see some of the younger kids again. Like, I miss Game of Thrones when they used to have the younger kids and, like, be cute, although they do kind of curse and stuff, so it's like, yeah, they should not be doing that. That's bad. And then we have Duncan, who notices Darian who's in a tent, and he's still kind of injured from the tourney. And Duncan kind of calls him out, saying that, like, yeah, the men that died, even Baylor, that's your fault. This could have been avoided. Have you no shame? And Darren is just like, like, whatever, like, I want my drink, doesn't really care. And then he mentions that my brother wasn't always a little monster. And he's talking about Arian, and he mentions to Duncan how, Arian was normal at a time, but then he just changed, and then he just went crazy, like, and he mentions, like, maybe, like, he asked Duncan if, like, will you try to let Egg squire for you, because if not, he might just be another Arian. And then meanwhile, we see a fish and a knife, and then we see that it is Egg's room. Egg is in his room, and he is going to the mirror and notices some fuzz. He's got some fuzz. His Targaryen white hair is coming back. It's growing again. So then we see that the knife is gone, and we see, I didn't know whose room this was, but we have Aegon going into his brother Arian's room with the knife. And I was just like, oh man, is he going to threaten him again? Like, is he going to threaten him just the way his brother used to do to him? That'd be pretty cool. But no, I started noticing this. I'm like, oh, well, he's crying. He's going to try and kill him. And then it turns out Maekar, their father, was sitting in the corner, keeping quiet and stuff, and then he notices Aegon, and Aegon is crying, and he's about to, kill him, but then he stops himself, and then Maekar takes his son. Aegon drops the knife, and then he kind of comforts Aegon and holds him, and then all of a sudden a guard comes in, and he says that Duncan is here, Sir Duncan, and then we see Gwen Ashford, and she tells Duncan, hey, I don't blame you for ruining my birthday. And we see that she's been crying a lot too, so it's like, wow, like, man, she loved Baelor too. Like, everybody loved Balon, which is understandable. I mean, he was an awesome guy. He was the GOAT, so anyways, after that, Sir Duncan is talking to Maekar again, Prince Maekar, and he mentions how, hey, before Baelor died, he said the realm needed good men, and, he says that, I can squire for Egg, but, he needs to be away from Summerhall and stuff, from the riches. And then Maekar's like, oh, his family, you mean? Like, and, Duncan says, like, yes, we need to, be away from the castle and the privileges, go from inn to inn and lesser lording and stuff. And, but Maekar does not like this, because he says Aegon is the blood of the dragon, and he's a prince, not a hedge knight, not some small folk, not some garbage rat kind of thing. He deserves better, which is understandable. There is a way you can do this. Like, there is a way you can meet in the middle between spoiled brat and poor slob, you know what I mean? There is a way you can humble Egg, but also keep him safe and fairly well off, and there's a couple ways you can do this. Just a couple conditions. One is you send 2 Kingsguard with Duncan and Egg to protect them and go on the journey with them across the realm. Condition 2, they visit Summerhall every once in a while. Condition 3, you give them a big bag of gold so that they can always stop at an inn or a castle or something like that, and then that kind of thing. Yeah, so like that's all you need to do. But yeah, Maekar's not having it, and he leaves, so Duncan doesn't really know what to do. And then Duncan is on his own. He's packing up his horses, his stuff, and trying to leave. And then we see Sweetfoot, his horse that he sold back 3 episodes ago. She's coming back, and then Raymond mentions how he kind of bought Sweetfoot for him, kind of thing, and then also finds out that, like, Sir Lionel, like, Duncan's not going back with him to Storm's End. And then Duncan, however, offers Sweetfoot to Raymond instead. What would make sense, Roanne does need a horse herself. And, Raymond pulls out an apple and stuff, and he's gonna take Sweetfoot and start a new life, And then meanwhile, we see Duncan at the oak tree, elm tree, whatever, and it looks like he's cleaning his nails with a knife. I don't really know how you do that. That's not safe. But anyways, after that, he wasn't sure what he was doing, but then he bashed the penny against with his knife, using it as a hammer. And then so he did the same thing that Sir Arlen talked about, where you put a penny in the tree, and then you go on your journey, come back and take it. So yeah, that's what he's doing. I don't know how you can do that though in real life. That seems kind of hard. But yeah, Duncan is, going again. He's making a quick stop, and all of a sudden Egg shows up out of nowhere, and he's just like, Duncan, my father says I can squire for you, and I'm just like, did he really? I don't know about that. But Duncan tells Egg, call me sir, and let's get a move on. You have, I have Thunder. You have, the other horse, the brown one. Although they're both brown, I don't know. It's kind of confusing. So yeah, they're on their way. They don't know where to go, and Ed kind of mentions how technically he kind of corrects Duncan with the 7 kingdoms, and he's like, technically it's 9 kingdoms, sir. And this is kind of funny, like once again Egg just being too smart, and it's kind of funny how he mentions it, like how there's the Iron Islands north, the Reach, there is the Westerlands, the Riverlands, the Vale, the Crown Lands, there's the Stormlands, there's Dorne. You know what I mean? So altogether, that is 9 regions, 9 kingdoms if you think about it. Like, you know what I mean? But obviously, it's called the 7 kingdoms, not 9 kingdoms, which is kind of funny. I always mention this in Game of Thrones, that little bit of hypocrisy and inconsistency. And Duck is just like, wait, what? This makes no sense. Like, it's funny. And then we see them riding off into, kind of the sunset. And we see Sir Arlen with Sweetfoot riding behind them, but he kind of parts ways and goes the opposite direction. I think it would have been better if they just faded out of shot or something, but, this is cool too. And then that's it. It ends. We get the Night of the... Oh yeah. And then we get Night of the 9 Kingdoms, which is kind of funny. And then all of a sudden we have the Targaryen family leaving. Ashford, they're finally ready to go. They're happy. Then all of a sudden, Prince Maekar is looking around. And it's just like, wait a minute, what the heck? Where's Aegon? And he's asking his guards, like, hey, well, where's Aegon? We can't find him. And he's just like, where the freak is my son? Like, where is he? And it's just like, oh, Aegon, once again. It turns out Egg pulled it off. He didn't ask his father permission. He didn't get permission for his father to squire for Sir Duncan again. Turns out he ran away from home. Oh, Egg, you little rascal. I'm sure this is not going to be a huge problem and cause a war that will kill lots of people and cause so many problems. But who can stay mad at you? Yeah. So that's it. Set up for season 2. And then boom, it ends. And it's so funny. They played 16 hours. The way it goes, the song, it goes, bum bum, you work 16 hours, and what do you get? Coal mining. Like, it's like, it's that kind of song, which is so funny. You would never hear that in Game of Thrones, ever. It's just such a goof song, which is kind of funny. It's hilarious. I find that funny. I think it's cool, because I heard this song many times before in other, shows and movies, so it is kind of funny. So yeah, guys, that's going to be it for my review. Let me know what you thought of this episode down in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time, guys. A Night of the 7 Kingdoms was great. Loved the characters. It was just fantastic. I can't wait for more. I guess now I have House of the Dragon to start. Oh boy, not looking forward to that. Alright, guys.